out of sorts. Item number 3 is a public hearing. It's a 20-41. It's a conditional use permit for an office combined with showrooms and warehouse in a commercial COP district. What is that? Overlay something or other? A district, and variance to reduce front yard setback at 901 Christensen Drive West, Lot 4, Block 1 of Christensen's 3rd edition, City of West Fargo, North Dakota, Hebron Brick.
Thank you. This application was received in order to allow development of office combined with showrooms and warehouse in a commercial office park district, and a variance to reduce the front yard setback from 60 to 25 feet. The submitted site plan shows a 2-story, 10,630 square foot office showroom building, as well as warehousing and storage areas designated for the landscaping products. A higher construction standard is required in both the commercial office park district and the interstate corridor overlay district. Any exposed metal or fiberglass on all buildings shall be limited to no more than 30% of any wall which fronts on a public street. Truck parking and loading shall be screened with materials of the principal building and screening so that such uses are not directly visible from the interstate or any public street. There are additional landscaping requirements on all property within the commercial office park district. No less than 25% of the property shall be landscaped with trees, shrubs, grass, and other cultured plantings. With regard to the applicant's request for a variance from the required front yard, the Planning Commission is required to hold a public hearing and forward their findings and recommendations to the Board of Adjustment. The following criteria are required to be met in order to grant a variance: that special conditions and circumstances exist that are peculiar to the land structure or building involved and which are not applicable to other land structures or buildings in the same district; that the literal interpretation of the provisions of this ordinance would deprive the applicant of rights commonly enjoyed by other properties in the same district under the terms of this ordinance; that special conditions and circumstances do not result from the actions of the applicant, and that the granting of the variance requested will not confer on the applicant any special privilege that is denied by this ordinance to other lands, structures, or buildings in the same district. The applicant responded that they are requesting a variance to reduce the front yard building setback from 60 to 25 feet. The hardship that is necessitating the variance request is the existing 100-foot gas line easement that cuts diagonally from the west property line to the northeast property corner. If required to adhere to the 60-foot building setback, there would be a portion of the property that would be rendered unusable, and it would in effect increase the building setback to over 100 feet if the building were to be located on the south side of the easement. A submitted exhibit shows the proposed variance and the existing gas line easement locations on the property. The applicant indicated that adjusting the front building setback allows for the view of the main building to be unimpeded by the required parking for the business. This also allows a higher construction standard to be visible from the interstate. In terms of staff analysis, the applicant has provided proof that special circumstances exist on the property which cause hardship in development of the property. There are instances where development of the property with an existing underground gas line is very costly, difficult to construct, and at times unbuildable. This property appears to be buildable if the city can alter the requirements of the front yard setback. It should be noted in consideration of the request for a variance that the city should be prepared to grant a variance for any other property in a similar situation as is the applicant, where the front yard setback has minimal impact, such as in this case where the front yard setback is adjacent to interstate right-of-way. The city should be prepared to use the same consideration. With reference to the criteria for granting a conditional use permit, no concerns were noted except in terms of screening on staging, storage, and display, which has previously been required of all applicants on adjacent properties. The applicant has not properly conveyed how these will be screened. This could further be reviewed when building plans are reviewed and should be a condition of approval. Notices were sent to property owners within 350 feet and applicable agencies and departments. A comment was received in support of the development. It is also recommended that the city approve the conditional use permit with the following conditions. Screening plan and/or description of product storage on the site is provided and approved by City Commission. Number 2, building and site plan review will require future approval by the Planning Commission and City Commission consistent with the requirements of the Corridor Overlay District, Interstate Corridor Overlay District. Number 3, development will be subject but not limited to the Commercial Office Park District standards, the Interstate Corridor Overlay District, supplementary district regulations, landscaping standards, off-street parking and loading, and sign regulations. And number 4, a signed conditional use permit agreement is received. In terms of the variance and recommendations and proposed findings, it is recommended that the city approve the variance on the basis of the following findings. Number 1, there exists a special condition on this property coupled with its location and the requirements of the zoning district, which create a difficult task of suitably building on the property. Number 2, the literal interpretation of provisions of this ordinance deprive the applicant of the ability to build upon the property while properly screening the rear storage area. Although others in the district have been able to build on a lot in the district that contains a gas line easement, the direction of the 100-foot gas line easement on this property fronting the roadway is unique compared to its placement on other properties in the same district. Number 3, the circumstances could be avoided if the applicant were to build further back on the lot. However, it would create a large amount of open space adjacent to the interstate frontage that would otherwise not be used for anything of value. The proposed alternative is an effective and preferred use of the property. Number 4, granting the variance would not result in special privilege to the applicant. Similar circumstances should result in the same privilege granting to others. In this case, reducing the front yard setback where it is adjacent to such a large amount of right-of-way, 280 feet in both interstate and local road, will have a minimum impact to the public while providing additional efficiencies to the property. This is a public hearing. We're asking for review of the variance and of the conditional use permit.
Thank you, Lisa. This is a public hearing. With that, I'd like to open it up to any comments from the public. And I think we have a way for me to know if there's comments, correct?
Correct,
Yes,
yep.
if the hand raised, Brandon will let you know.
And
Sounds
we
good.
do have a person.
Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, this is John Eunice. I'm not sure. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right, John Eunice, Eagle Ridge Development, representing Hebron Brick. I think Lisa did a great job of explaining the kind of the issues with this site as to the reason why we're requesting this variance. I'd be happy to answer any questions you guys have. I've also got Jean from Hebron here as well, if you have any specific questions relating to their business.
Thank you, Jonathan. Are there any other comments from the public? Open to any comments from the public? Seeing none, we'll close that for now. If somebody wants to speak up, go ahead and I'll get alerted, but we'll close that portion of the hearing for now. Commissioners.
I'd like to thank the staff for including in our packet the criteria for granting a variance. It seems that would have been helpful maybe in some other deliberations we've had. If I'm understanding these are not conditions created by the property owner, but are in fact inherent in the property, which allows a variance. I did have a question about the comment from the property owner about the whether the street could handle additional truck traffic and if there are plans to widen or improve it. And I see that engineering has indicated, if I can read this, that they needed or they would like the anticipated truck weights and counts for master planning for future modifications. What is it we ought to know at this point in time about the truck traffic? Or is this strictly the variance from the 100 foot or the 60 foot rule? And we're not looking really at the proposal itself. Does that make sense?
The comment from the adjacent property owner regarding the whether it could handle truck traffic or not was a comment involving another property, the concrete business to the south, where they had apparently beefed up the road. Engineering is here and could possibly answer some questions regarding that. They did wonder about the number of vehicles that were going to be delivered. So that may be something that would need to be reviewed when we do the final site plan review regarding the interstate corridor. It doesn't involve the variance. It's just a comment that was made when we notified the property owners regarding the conditional use permit.
So we're really only being asked to determine whether the variance is acceptable at this point.
There are two parts, the conditional use permit and then the variance. So the conditional use permit is for the use. Conditionally permitted uses in the commercial office park district are office with showrooms and warehousing. If this is zoned commercial office park, if it was just an office, it would be a permitted use, but the addition of the showrooms and the warehousing makes it a conditionally permitted use.
Mr. Chair, and Commissioner Lockout, through the conditional use permit process, we could add conditions deemed necessary if the road was determined to be not appropriate for the use. We could add conditions to require them to enhance the road, but that ability also exists at time of permitting as well. So at our permit routing, our engineering department will be given the opportunity to either approve or deny the application. If the road can't handle the traffic weights of the truck traffic that they have, they could deny the permit at that time until they reinforce the road. So if the Planning Commission feels strongly that it should be added as a condition, or at least that it should be reviewed before City Commission, certainly a condition you could lay on your recommendations. At this point, engineering was not overly concerned about it, but I would say they probably haven't gotten the details from Hebron about the size and weight of trucks yet. Jerry, I don't know if that's accurate or not. But.
So we could add that to one of the conditions. Yep. If we felt that was.
Lisa or Tim, could one of you just walk through what the thinking was originally that provided for the setback? Was it interstate noise related? Was it where did that setback come from?
Yeah, a lot of these overlay districts come as a result of planned unit developments. So we did a PUD initially. If Commissioner Thorstad, I'm really glad he's here because he'll probably remember a lot of this too. But the Bobcat Company was really part of both the interstate overlay district and the office park district. And, we sort of set up these overlay districts and that office park district based upon how they developed their property. And right, wrong, or indifferent, times change, also situations change. They could have gone planned unit development on this whole thing, and we would have looked at the site a little bit differently. I think the variance is as equal as a PUD would be here. I hate to use a PUD just for everything, but when you look at the property and how they would develop it, I would much rather have a nice looking building, which is controlled by our office park district standards and the interstate overlay, than having a parking lot or storage out front. So that's where I think, you look at the site in itself and the variance, we were able to justify a variance as much as we probably would have been able to justify a PUD, but the PUD just seems sort of like unnecessary. I don't like it as much. So I don't know if I answered your question well enough or not, but the setback was really to have a beautiful aesthetic sort of feel. And it's the way we used to do things. It looks a lot like 13th Avenue and 32nd Avenue and 40th Avenue with these big front yards.
I appreciate that. I actually think they've done a very good job of fitting what they need into a difficult site. So I think this is a good request moving forward. I was just, generally I've seen those larger setbacks usually when you're talking about residential adjacent to an interstate, not so much commercial, but a lot of the reasoning there is when you have a lot of noise from the interstate or other things that could become a bother to the landowner. So why I was asking is because if we were to grant the variance, you might want to include a waiver of future complaints about those types of things from the landowner. But if it was simply an aesthetic purpose, then that may not be necessary. So appreciate your response.
Yeah, and if I can, Mr. Chair, just one add to that, we do have specific noise regulations as it pertains to residential properties along the interstate. So great point, and probably something to remember. And I think too, maybe it should be something that we look at in our findings, and maybe we work with John to make sure that as the commission considers it, that be added in there in consideration, because it's not appropriate for housing to be that close to that, but that's not the intent of that interstate overlay district. And I would say too, in addition to the deliberation here, one thing we didn't talk about, the cost to move underground gas line is substantial. And if we can find ways as a city to work with developers on not having to deal with that, I think staff certainly supports that, just based on our past experience. So.
Well, this is a case where a variance makes sense, you know, and it can't be applied to a lot of different properties. You know, this is something kind of specific to this property alone. You know, and it makes a lot of sense to do it that way. It looks like you're able to build a parking lot on top of a gas pipeline, but you certainly wouldn't want a building on top of it. So I would move to recommend approval of both the conditional use and the variance, along with we do need to look at that road, that it's going to be able to handle heavy truck traffic, because bringing brick in and out of there it's heavy. I used to lay brick in the wintertime for a guy, and you know, those things aren't light. And so there's going to be very heavy truck traffic coming out of there, at least, you know, heavier than even that concrete company, because they're not hauling concrete in and out of there. So, I mean, that needs to be an important part of the discussion.
I would second that motion.
Okay, so if I got this right, it's moved and seconded to approve both the variance and the conditional use permit with the additional, along with the staff's recommendation, plus a recommendation to verify the street can handle the loads that are coming in there. Is that what I understand? The
Yes.
Intent? Okay. So hopefully somebody wrote that down. I understand it. Everybody else does, I think. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, same sign. That motion passes. I think for commentary on the side, I think that's an awesome project for that crazy lot on the end of that. As long as the streets can handle it, that's going to look beautiful. I think that's perfect. For those of you who might not know, that is the last lot on that very difficult place to build, and the conditional use permit component of that has been used on almost all of those other buildings there, and it looks great. So I think it's super. Moving on to item number 4, that's a public hearing as well. It's A20-42. It's the Agassiz edition, replat and rezoning from R3 multiple dwellings to HC, which is heavy commercial, and LI, which is light commercial. I think is that wrong, Tim? Should that say light industrial? Tim, did I lose you?
No, you have me here. I'm sorry, I didn't see on the agenda. So it's wrong on the agenda. It was right on the notice.
Okay.
The light industrial.
Okay, that's what I thought. In all of the commentary that I read through, I believe that to be light industrial there. So anyway, so I'm gonna say it correctly. Multiple dwellings to HC, heavy commercial, and LI light industrial of lots 1 and 2, block 1 of STEFA 2nd edition, City of West Fargo, North Dakota, Weigel.
Thank you. This application was received in order to plat and rezone vacant property for sale and development purposes. The applicant is proposing to replat and rezone 2 lots. Lot 2 has been developed for a number of years with both outdoor and mini storage, whereas Lot 1 is zoned R3 multiple dwellings and has remained vacant. Proposed Lot 1 Block 1 of Agassiz Edition, which combines the northern portion of Lots 1 and 2, is proposed to be rezoned to light industrial with the intent to be sold to the property owner to the north, Agassiz Seeds, for future development. Proposed Lot 2 will remain heavy commercial for continued storage use. Section 4-449A Landscaping Standard of City Ordinances would require a buffer yard along the east side of the proposed Lot 1 of either a 6-foot architectural screen and 15-foot buffer yard of small evergreens alternated with deciduous trees, or a vegetative screen with a 30-foot buffer yard with small evergreen trees alternated with deciduous trees and 1 row of evergreens or other shrubs. Access for proposed Lot 1 would be via 7th Street Northwest to the west via an existing access easement. Notices were sent to property owners within 150 feet, applicable agencies, and departments. Any comments received after the agenda packets were sent out on Friday were forwarded to Planning and Zoning Commissioners. A couple of emails were received from an adjacent property owner regarding additional noise and truck traffic, as well as concerns with industrial development. Those emails were included with your agenda packet. An email from another property owner along 4th Avenue Northwest was received with concerns regarding increased truck traffic and potential impacts to the neighborhood. A phone call was received from an area property owner further to the east on Garden Avenue who had concerns with increased traffic and the proposed industrial development. An email from a area property owner to the south was received regarding a decrease in property values, air pollution, and heavy truck traffic. An email was received from the developer offering to meet with area property owners prior to the meeting and to answer questions and outline their potential plans. Phone calls and letters were received by both the potential buyer of the property as well as the seller. Both letters were forwarded to commissioners. An email was received from the Economic Development Director, which was also forwarded. In terms of consistency with the comprehensive plan and the G4A core retrofit growth sector, additional growth and development in this area is desirable due to the presence of existing infrastructure and proximity of service. The proposed application could be considered consistent with city plans and ordinances, provided buffering and screening is provided as per the landscape standard, which would also help to screen the residential properties from existing surrounding commercial and industrial uses. If it is found through deliberations by the commission that the proposal will not generate a nuisance to adjacent property owners and the general public, it is recommended that the city approve the proposed application on the basis that is consistent with city plans and ordinances, with recommended conditions of approval as follows. Number 1, concerns of adjacent neighborhood are given due consideration. Number 2, an updated drainage plan is approved by the city engineer. Number 3, an attorney title opinion to the city of West Fargo is received. Number 4, a signed final plat is received with any necessary easements. Number 5, a certificate is received showing taxes are current. If it is found through deliberation by the commission that the proposal will generate a nuisance to adjacent properties and the general public, it is recommended that the city deny the application. This is a public hearing. I'm open to answer any questions. I believe the developer and the seller are also available to answer any questions.
Thank you, Lisa. This is a public hearing. And with that, I would like to open it up to any comments from the public. Now, I have a feeling there might be some, so here's what I'd really like to just kind of set for some ground rules on this. If you're coming on to speak on behalf of this opposed or not, or approval, whatever, please state your name and your address so that we can have that on record, please. So with that, we'll open up to any comments from the public. I see in the chat that Cindy Bjerke would like to speak. I don't know what order you have these in as, but fire away.
Hi, are you able to see me?
I can't see you yet, but we can hear you.
Okay, because I do have some pictures as well that I'd like to show the committee. And I did test my video earlier and it showed it was working, so.
Are they the ones that you forwarded in the packet? Because we have those.
I didn't forward any pictures in the packet.
Okay.
Okay, I do have a prepared statement if you don't mind. My name is Cindy Bjerke and I live at 313 6th Street Northwest. And that is a townhome that is directly in front of one of the blocks of land that they have proposed to rezone. I'm here today to express my strong opposition of the rezoning request by Agassiz Seed and Supply for lots 1 and 2, block 1 of Steph's Addition. I was disappointed that only a dozen or so notices for this meeting were mailed only to residents within 150 yards of the rezoning proposal, when this issue affects our whole neighborhood. There are approximately 120 homes in our Riverside Armor Park neighborhood, consisting of single and multifamily homes, as well as the only entrance to Armor Park at the east end of 2nd Avenue, which frequently attracts an abundant amount of families for the playground, picnic shelter, grills, horseshoes, and volleyball courts. Rezoning these lots will not only potentially cause property values to go down, but additional damages in the form of noise, odor, and visual intrusions will occur. Traffic and safety issues are already a huge concern in our neighborhood. There is only one way in and out of our neighborhood via 6th Street Northwest, which provides access to the 5 avenues in our neighborhood. There are no sidewalks in our neighborhood, save for 2 blocks on one side of 6th Street. The school bus stop is also on this street, directly across from 2nd Avenue, where we see many trucks illegally enter and exit the industrial park via 6th Street and then on to 2nd Avenue. Every single street in our neighborhood has already been completely torn up by heavy trucks and equipment from the industrial park. And I mean completely torn up. I do have many pictures that I printed out to show today. The industrial park is supposed to use the Stockyard Road to access their businesses, but many don't. And it is common to see lost semi-trucks come through our neighborhood on a daily basis, only to find they've reached a dead end and they have to drive through our whole neighborhood in order to get to their intended destination. Although rezoning this land will affect the whole neighborhood, it will affect the owners and residents of the 10 townhomes on 6th Street Northwest the most. These townhomes are located directly in front of the land proposed to rezone. The townhomes were built in 1984, and for almost 37 years, we have had this buffer between our homes and the industrial park. We are already subject to extensive noise pollution from Agassiz Seed, which is located to the north of our townhomes. And in allowing them to expand their operations to the west will completely envelop our townhomes. Our peace and privacy will be compromised from the commercial light pollution that will make its way into our backyards and windows. There are also concerns of volatile odorous compounds that are an inherent part of many agricultural operations, such as Agassiz Seed and Supply. I know my opinions are shared by many who have not managed to attend this meeting or write letters and emails. One longtime resident and neighbor, Kim Koppelman, shared the following information with me. Her statement reads as follows. I worked with former longtime city planner Larry Wheel and NDDOT roughly 6 years ago during the Main Avenue Highway 10 project. That change was a great benefit to the area, but the removal of the frontage roads along Main, which was part of that project, predictably increased truck traffic on 6th Street. Previously, large trucks had difficulty navigating the turns on the frontage road, so they regularly used the Stockyard Road to access the commercial industrial area. They still should, as 6th Street is identified as not allowing trucks. That, however, is seldom heeded nor enforced. This also led to the agreement to face commercial building doors, windows, and access west rather than east on those buildings, and to trees being planted as a buffer on the east side of those commercial buildings, north of 2nd and west of 6th. Everyone wants to be a good neighbor, but appropriate buffers between drastically differently zoned areas are needed. Things need to get better, not worse. That is the end of Kim's statement. I did take the time personally here, Cindy, to visit the City of West Fargo's Planning and Zoning Committee's website, in which I read the vision statement for West Fargo. And this excerpt stands out. Vibrant, authentic, balanced, welcoming, with strong, livable neighborhoods where families and neighbors can build relationships in a safe, attractive, and healthy environment. The brunt of why this land in our neighborhood should not be rezoned should not fall on its residents, but rather the potential buyer should be held responsible with proving there is a need for the zone change. After researching this topic, there are 2 areas I'd like to call out as outlined by the planning.org that Agassiz Seed should be prepared to address. Number 1, that there is a need for the zone change. The proponent of the change should show that there has been a change in circumstances or that a mistake was made when the property was originally zoned, which was more than 40 years ago. As an example, if there is sufficient land elsewhere for heavy commercial and light industrial use, the fact the applicant wants to develop a specific piece of property should not be enough to justify a zone change, since there is no need to rezone the neighborhood. Now, I myself, there isn't a lack of heavy commercial and light industrial land for sale in West Fargo. A quick Google search resulted in 6 different plots of land listed for sale that are already properly zoned for heavy commercial and light industrial use. Number 2, that the zone change will be consistent with surrounding uses. This would require the applicant to show the zone change will not result in property values going down or interfere with existing development. For these reasons, I do ask that you deny the request to rezone this land. Thank you for your continued service and support of our communities. And again, I really wish I could show you all these pictures if there wasn't a way that you could.
Cindy, we're going to promote you here to be able to do that. Our IT just told me they can promote you up to be able to share here.
Hello?
Yep. So 1 second, you should be able to share.
Okay.
You've
Okay.
now been promoted, so you can, if you're connecting through a computer, you may share your screen, or if you're just going to kind of show us with your camera, you should have the option to do so now.
Okay, start video. I think that's it. Can you see me?
Yep.
Okay, so these are just some of the pictures that you can see of the streets. This is 4th Avenue. This is down at the end by the dead end of 6th Street, where there you can see the back of Agassiz Seed, but there is no way to get into Agassiz Seed because it's a dead end. So trucks go down 6th Street Northwest. They realize they can't access Agassiz Seed, so then they have to drive through our whole neighborhood to get back out, to get to the Stockyard Road, to get to Agassiz Seed. So this is one picture. Here's another one on Garden Avenue of their streets. This one, I believe, is 3rd Avenue, showing the damage. This is 2nd Avenue. This is the one that's directly by the bus stop that they go through. And then I know that we've all seen this. This is what they gave us that shows the plots of land that they want to develop. But if you really want to get a true sense of it, this is a picture of my backyard. And directly, I'm on my deck, and you can see the field right there, and then those buildings. There's a very short field. What is that? Maybe 200 feet? They want to develop that. So already we barely can enjoy our yards in the summertime. The noise from the industrial park, including Pure Performance motorcycle shop, it renders our backyards already useless in the daytime, Monday through Friday in the summer, because it's so loud that you cannot actually stand 6 feet apart and speak to your spouse. So that is a very small plot of land there that they want to develop. So basically we'll have semi trucks and buildings just right in our backyard. And now you see a picture of Agassiz Seed and see all of their semi trucks and all of their buildings and all of their heavy equipment, and another one of their buildings. So not only are they to the north of us, and there's buildings then to the south of us, now they're going to be to the east of us, and they're going to completely envelop our townhome. There is just a lot of concern with all of our neighbors. We see the trucks on a daily basis, as I said, going through there, the streets, they're just completely torn up. I ask if any of you wanted to drive down those streets and take a good look for yourself. And all the kids, the bus stop, everything. It's a major concern to all of us.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy. Are there any other comments from the public? I know there's one. I think Nate would like to speak, if we can arrange that.
Yes, I know Kim was asking to speak next, but she did mention that she would be willing to wait till everyone else spoke first. So I don't know if Kim would like to speak now, or if not, if she wants to wait, I can do Nate now.
So for your reference, Kim Koppelman is a man who happens to be one of our esteemed representatives as well. You might want to get to know him.
Oh, sorry about that, Kim.
That's fine. I can wait. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Nate.
Can you all hear me now?
We can hear you now.
Perfect. Well, thanks, commissioners, and thanks for having us today. And I appreciate Cindy's comments. I think I'll address some of her concerns and also maybe talk about what Kim is envisioning and Agassiz Seed is envisioning for that lot to help maybe ease some tension. First, I'd like to address Cindy's two comments that she asked to be addressed was reason for the zone change. And the second thing she asked was that if it's consistent with the neighborhood. So I don't know if you're able to allow me to share my screen. If you can, great. If not, that's okay as well. But in regards to the reason for the zone change, obviously Kim is spending a substantial amount of money to purchase this lot. He has immediate plans in the next 5 to 10 years to expand his company to the north side of his building. And in the 10 to 15 year range, if all goes well, he would expand to the south of his building, which would be on this empty parcel of land that is currently R3. And so the reasoning for it is not an immediate reasoning, but since he is purchasing the land now, he'd like to have it entitled correctly at this point. Is actually his immediate plan for the lot is to leave it as is for the next 10 to 15 years and actually use it as grass testing plots. So it's going to appear as is currently and probably better than it is currently for the neighbors. Secondly, just to speak to Cindy's request in regards to consistent with existing zoning. If you look at the zoning map, which I have pulled up, and if I can't share my screen, that's fine. But when you talk about existing zoning,
at the moment you can get promoted here. It kind of cuts you off for a second.
Okay.
Pause for a moment. You can get promoted here. All good, Brandon?
Yeah, I think it's working here. 1 second. Can everyone see my screen? I have 3 documents open.
Yes.
Yep, we can see it now.
Perfect. I'm going to open this one up. So in regards to Cindy's comment in regard consistent with existing zoning, you can see that all of the light purple is the same zoning that Kim is requesting. And then where I have it circled is kind of the transitional neighborhood and the MR3 here. And this is, I believe, commercial zoning. So it's definitely consistent with the zoning. I think it's probably the opposite issue of the fact that, this is almost a correction of a spot zoning for an R3 that maybe shouldn't have been R3 and now is probably going in the correct direction. In regards to the property owners to the east of this lot who've had a large open yard in their backyard for many of years, it may not seem that way, but it would definitely meet the criteria of being consistent with the zoning around this property. I just want to touch on a couple other quick things, and then I'll allow Kim or anyone else to ask questions or make their statements. It's a kind of a tagline these days of infill projects, and this is a perfect example of an infill project. Agassiz is currently at this location. They're doing well and they want to expand and they don't want to relocate to another industrial park. And so it makes perfect sense for them to slowly try to acquire some lots around their existing location, and especially if they're underutilized lots. Kim, as everyone knows, is an existing neighbor. His trucks and what have you, there may be people that make mistakes and drive up 6th Street North, but his entrance is on the west side of his property. So any damage to 6th Street on the south side could potentially be from truck traffic. But the way that this development is designed is that unless they make a mistake, the majority of people should be accessing not on the roads in front of the townhomes, but on the roads within the industrial development. As stated by Lisa, part of the ordinance is that a landscape buffer would have to be installed once Kim puts up his building, which I think is twofold. One, it will help buffer and allow a little bit of extra yard, appearance of an extra yard, even though I believe the condos yards end at the fence line right now. It'll also block probably some of the noise and disturbance of the motorsports group that is across the way. Thirdly, we did try to meet with the neighbors, as is accustomed to rezoning, people that send in requests to the city. Those requests are then sent out to the developers and owners, as they were in all rezoning cases. And we did reach out to the neighbors to try to talk through the issues, and we were asked, or we were told that they would not like to talk before the meeting. They would rather not meet and try to find a middle ground. They would rather just come to the meeting today and talk about the issues that they have. So we did put out the effort of trying to work with the group and try to find a middle ground, but that was not able to be done. As everyone knows, the 150-foot radius around a rezoning is typical in West Fargo for property owners. The fact that this was sent out in that radius and we received only 4 letters of protest back, and actually one was from Cindy next door, and the other 3, one was 3 blocks away, one was 2 blocks away, and one was a little bit down the street. It may seem that it was a substantial issue or dispute, but from past rezoning applications, definitely didn't get a neighborhood concerned as many other issues. I think probably the neighborhood understands that they're on the fringe of a light industrial development, and that is probably not going to change. And for a property to be utilized for its best use is probably the reason for the rezone today. So that's all I have. I think Kim can probably add a little bit of insight in regards to his plans for the property that he is. I don't know how long Kim has been at his current location, but I did take a tour around, and in regards to an industrial property, it looks like he runs a pretty clean operation, and I would encourage the neighborhood group to maybe listen to Kim and understand what he plans to do with that property.
Nate, just add a clarification. You're referencing Kim Alberty, the owner of Mr. Kim Alberty, the owner of Egg Seed, and we do have also a person on the public hearing who's a neighbor. Representing Compliment. So
correct. Yes. Sorry about that. Yep.
No problem.
I was all my Kims were referencing Kim with Egg Seed.
I'd like to be able to respond to your comments, please.
That would be up to the chair.
Go ahead.
Okay. So I've never been to any city meeting. I've never worked with the Planning and Zoning Committee. I've never gotten involved in any of this. So how things work and don't work, what's appropriate, what's not appropriate, was completely unknown to me. I do know, though, that we received the first letter on the 24th telling us about this meeting, and it told us that anybody who wanted to attend could go to City Hall, and that's where you would attend the meeting. It also, the letter was from Lisa Sankey, and we were also told to give any email or any questions or concerns. We could also email with comments. So I decided to email so your committee would be aware ahead of time before the meeting that there were concerns. And that's when I found out that the meeting was virtually. So I reached out to Lisa to send out a corrected letter to the residents affected, letting them know how they could attend the meeting, that it would be virtual. So a whole bunch of people would not show up at City Hall and have nobody there. The email that Lisa replied back to me, she refused to send a corrected letter. And so I reached out to the director, Tim Solberg, and he sent everybody a corrected letter, which, by the way, they just received yesterday. So the fact that there might not be a lot of people on this call might be the fact that they didn't have the appropriate notice or time to be on the call. The other thing, as everybody knows, is busy. People care, but not enough to maybe to reach out. This is the first time I've ever reached out for something like this. Now that plot of land, and Nate is saying, well, if you look at that circled area, that's a lot of industrial. Well, look at the circle to the right. That's a lot of residential. It's been a residential neighborhood for over 40 years. So taking that plot of land and rezoning it to commercial takes those 10 townhomes and completely surrounds them with industrial use. And trees, I mean, I appreciate the offer. That's not really going to do much. I mean, if we were talking about maybe an earthen dike or something to that effect, our townhomes, and they're not condos, by the way, they're townhomes. I just want to clarify that there's a difference. The townhomes are at least 30 feet tall. They're 3 stories. They're very tall. The main floor, the ground one, is your garage and your entryway. Then going up level is main living quarters. And then you go up another level, and that's where the bedrooms, another bathroom, and the laundry rooms are. So looking out on my 3rd floor of my townhome, I can already see the whole industrial, area right there. I mean, and that's just part of it. I mean, we understand that. We bought our townhome 6 years ago and we understood this, but we'd also understood that the land directly behind us has been sitting vacant for over 40 years and that it was for multiple dwelling. So we did expect that maybe someday there could be some either more townhomes or some apartments back there. We certainly didn't expect that there was going to be a rezone and try to take away what little piece that we did have in that area. So that is one thing. And the other thing is there's 10 townhomes there. I believe there's 1 or 2 of them that are rented and the rest are owners. So I don't know if those letters went to the renters there, if it went to that address or it went to the actual owners of the buildings as to why there was more people on here. But this isn't the first time that this has come up with the city of West Fargo. From my understanding from a previous nature, this has happened at least on 2 other occasions, and the city of West Fargo denied the request to rezone it.
Thank you, Cindy. Are there any other comments from the public?
Ooh, one more thing, I'm sorry. When we were reached out by the property owner real estate agent, Drew Kelly, he did send me an email asking that I meet with them, and I didn't respond. And then the next day I received a phone call. And I didn't know how any of this works. So I denied the request because I figured that's what this meeting is for us all to give your reasons why you do or do not want the change. That's why I declined to meet with the person. But I have concerns that the email with my personal information that I sent to the city of West Fargo was sent on to the real estate agents of Agassiz Seed without my permission. And I really feel that somebody should have reached out to me saying, hey, the real estate agents, for Agassiz Seed would really like to discuss something with you. Can I provide them with your phone number and email address? But nobody did. And so that is concerning. I don't think anybody just likes their personal information shared without being contacted and asked if it's okay. So thank you.
So I think on that particular note, the fact that you're involved in the conversation makes it a matter of public record. So I think on that side of things, that's why they're trying to put people together.
Okay.
So I appreciate that. And I 100% understand where you're coming from, but it's kind of the part of the process that happens there.
I apologize that we didn't notify her that it would be public information, and we'll do a better job at that in the future.
So I don't think anybody's trying to be underhanded or anything like that, but just so you understand that part of when you have a situation like this, what we really like to do is get the parties together and have conversations that can lead to an amicable agreement one way or the other. And that was the whole intent, not to throw anybody under a bus of any kind. So I appreciate the comments very much, though. Are there any other comments from the public? I know Kim Koppelman is waiting here, but were there any before that?
Yes, we have a Joseph and a Ryan that are also would like to speak. I can start with Joseph since I think his hand was up first. His or her.
Okay. Go ahead, Joseph.
Yes. Earlier, when they were talking about the proposal, they also mentioned upgrading the sewer lines in the neighborhood and everything else like that. My question is, Agassiz Seed with growing is already a tight space for trucks to get into. Now you're going to expand and add more truck traffic into an already tight, congested area, which is going to tear up the streets worse than what was already stated. And I understand, you know, businesses are going to grow, but this is not an area that's going to be able to grow for heavier use than what it already is. And then when you start to redevelop all of this area with the streets, with the sewer lines, now you're going to be adding more taxes and more onto the residents of a neighborhood that, you know, who's going to be paying for all this extra stuff? And that's my biggest concern.
Thank you. Was there a Ryan as well that wanted to speak? Who's Google Earthing? Is that you, Tim?
Can you hear me?
Oh, we can, yes.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay, so my name is Ryan Kurtz. I live on the most south unit, 301.
Okay.
The storage shed is basically my fence line that the previous owners had agreed to share with the family that was there before. So basically going into my backyard from the front of my house, I'm walking in between a metal storage unit and my home, which is not more than 5 feet. So are they planning on tearing down those storage units?
No, that's not the intention of the project. No.
Okay, because I saw, you know, all that's highlighted as far as it's lined out for what they're gonna own. So in that particular unit right there that's adjacent to my home, what are they planning on doing with that?
I believe the storage units are staying as is and maybe will be enhanced. But the main part of it is the grass area to the west and the area that's fenced in to the northwest.
Okay, so the storage units are staying there and they're gonna enhance them.
You would have to ask the property owner, but this rezoning does not involve the storage unit directly to your south, I do not believe.
It was lined out that it was.
I'm not sure what you mean by lined out. Maybe.
Like if you, yeah, see, okay, that picture you just brought up right now?
Yes, so the properties in question are all highlighted here. This lot that my cursor is over is currently zoned heavy commercial.
Okay.
This lot is currently zoned R3 multifamily residential. The proposal is to change this lot and have a portion of that continue to be heavy commercial, which would be this warehousing and cold storage. The portion to the north of that would be proposed to be light industrial, which would be an expansion of Agassiz Seed. So we highlighted all the parcels as they exist today to highlight the properties in question.
Okay, so the storage unit right next to my place there, 301, that one that you're pointing at right now, nothing's going to be done with that.
Nothing is proposed to be done with that today, no.
Okay, because my only concern was that, well, if that was going to be torn down, what was going to, protect my kids, my dogs, and my house, because it's like basically 5 feet away.
So if it were to be torn down, the portion of that would likely be I don't want to say unbuildable, but it'd be very difficult. It's currently what we call legal non-conforming. So at the time of its development, it was, I don't know what zoning was in place at the time, to be honest with you. It was probably the city of Riverside. There was no setbacks from property line, no setbacks from the residential property. If it were to be substantially damaged beyond 50%, they would have to comply with the current ordinance, which would require a buffer yard and setbacks from the residential property following the residential property's required setbacks. So your property being R3, they'd have to probably have at least 12-foot setback from that property. So redevelopment of that site would be beneficial to you, but they are legally able to continue to enjoy that piece of property because at the time we brought our zoning ordinance into rule here, they were brought in as sort of, we call it grandfathered, I guess is the easiest term.
So,
Okay.
so Tim, I saw a note pop up. Somebody believed that that property was part of what was being sold to Agassiz. I don't believe that's true.
No.
Only the northeast lot is the one in question here.
That's correct.
Okay.
Northeast lot.
Yeah, so the stuff that's right behind the townhomes and going north, not the where the storage units are today is actually not really part of the conversation. It's only part of the conversation to show that it's currently zoned whatever, light industrial, is that right?
Heavy commercial.
Heavy commercial, okay.
Okay.
The lots as they're proposed, and we sent this out as well. Apologize, it might be hard to see on the screen. I'm working off a laptop right now, but
I'm zooming it. Okay. Yeah, I guess that was my main concern as far as if that's torn down, whatever, what happens to my fence, basically. And if that's still going to be open all of a sudden. So ultimately, I'd be responsible to spend another $5,000-$6,000 on a fence, right?
is it your fence or is it your neighbor's fence?
Well, the wall of that storage unit is my fence. So that's why I have a little bit bigger property, because the family that resided there before me had talked to the owner of those storage units and allowed him to do that.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So the actual physical wall of the storage unit acts as your fence to the south.
Correct.
Gotcha.
So if it were to be redeveloped, which isn't proposed right now, but if it were to be redeveloped, they'd have to meet the current zoning requirements. So you'd end up with more open space there, or you'd have a fence and open space. They have two options. They can either do a larger buffer yard with more distance with trees, or they can do a buffer yard that's a little bit smaller with a fence. So you may lose some property that you're currently enjoying that's not yours, but you'd end up with more probably open space there.
Okay. And
I'm sorry,
go ahead.
I can certainly talk you through that. If you want to call me tomorrow, I can certainly talk you through that. We could look more specifically at your property as well.
So Tim, I thank you for bringing this one up because it answers the questions as to what's going on here. So the outdoor storage space is in fact being proposed to be part of Agassiz. the buildings that are there that make up the mini storage and so forth, those are not changing
That is correct.
in this proposal.
That is correct.
Gotcha. Are there any other comments from the public? Thank you.
I've got it. This is David Gust. I've got a question for Nate. I see, there's access to 6th Street Northwest on this property. Does Agassiz have any intention of accessing this property from 6th Street Northwest? And I'd also like to know how wide of a buffer strip are you guys planning on that area?
They don't have any intentions of using 6th Street Northwest. They would actually access it through probably their existing building and or the lot to the northwest, the area that's currently fenced in. What was your other question?
How wide of a buffer strip are you guys proposing? And then that access from 6th Street, would that just remain then green space on the north end, or would you be expanding into that area also?
I might like Kim answer that. I believe I know their intentions, but I might let Kim from Agassiz answer that question if he's on.
Yes, I'm on.
There you go.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes, we can.
Okay. We have no intention of accessing the property from 6th. We never have up to this point. Our intention would be to actually put a fence across between the southeast corner of our property and the existing fence that the residential area has. As far as the width or depth of the buffer, we would intend to put a 30-foot mix of deciduous and evergreen trees directly to the west of the townhomes, so that by the time we build in there, probably 15 years down the road, that there would be some fairly mature trees that would that offer a fair amount of buffer for a visual buffer at any rate.
Kim, thank you. There is this question about trucks using 2nd or 6th Street. We'll get to that, I'm sure, in a little bit. I don't know, Ryan, if you have access to the chat function, but the actual owner of the storage units popped on and said, to answer your specific question, there is no intention of tearing down any of the units. The intention is to actually improve them. So with that, any other comments from the public?
And I guess the only other question I would have is the expansion primarily for storage of seed products, or is it for conditioning and that kind of thing?
Am I still on?
Yep.
You are.
Okay. No, we don't actually do any conditioning in the facility. We do some blending and repackaging. We intend to eventually put up a warehouse similar to what we've got currently in use on the north property, and we will not be generating noise or dust or odors that should be offensive to anybody, because we simply don't have a seed cleaning plant and don't intend to put one up.
Thank you.
I see Cindy Bjerke popped in with a question about what about streetlights, and I assume they're talking about how are you going to light that warehouse from the outside behind everybody's homes. This is stuff that should be talked about between you and the residents. Those things could all be discussed, and I'd like to see some kind of meeting between you and the residents that have concerns. I mean, that would make this a lot easier for everybody, I think.
We would be happy to have a meeting. The offer was out there to do it at 4 o'clock today, and we didn't hear back from any of the residents, so we have nothing to hide at all. We don't, as I Nate stated, and I'll reaffirm, we don't intend to start any construction on the south side of our existing building in this property for years to come. We own 2 acres to the north of our existing property that is has a 4-phase building project on it. We completed phase 1 this past spring, and additionally 3 more phases of that will be done before we would ever look at going to the south. We've been in this facility for 25 years and have slowly built as we can afford to do so, and that is our intention to continue to do, and try to be a good neighbor. Our goal is for you folks not to know that we exist over there. We recognize that we're a commercial industrial facility on the edge of a residential property, and the reason for the trees to the east of our existing building is to try and be a buffer of some sort, at least visually, and we intend to continue to do that in the new property.
Well, I would advise everybody to look at this, and if there's going to be another row of townhomes behind there, somebody would build a road coming in from 6th, going to the west, and then you'd have a road behind your houses instead of a 30-foot buffer leading up to just basically warehouse storage. I mean, I think that would be more detrimental than what you guys are proposing here. I mean, I've done business with Agassiz Seed. I mean, my runways with your grass seed, and I grow prairie grass around my yard, and you know, it's a quiet facility, and you know, if there was going to be a good business for this area, this would be it. I mean, and that's why I think it's important, you know, for somehow the people to sit down and talk about this, and maybe even go through a tour of your facility to see what you guys do, so they have a better understanding of what actually goes on there. Because a lot of the things I've heard described of what would happen back there, you guys aren't even involved in. I mean, I think that's got to be a really important part of this.
So I know there's at least one more. I see some different things in the chat. Those are all things that can be talked about in a meeting. But I do believe we have one more person waiting to speak before we close the public hearing side.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Greetings. Well, I have video and audio here, so I'll chime in. Kim Koppelman. I live at 513 First Avenue Northwest. We also have a business. We years ago bought the lot next door to us and built across the lot line, and we've owned an advertising agency for 36 years, and now 20 of those years have been right here in the neighborhood, but you wouldn't know we're there because although we have a separate entrance and professional office space next door to our home, it's physically attached on First Avenue. So we are both residents and business people in the neighborhood. Full disclosure, and by the way, you have the rare opportunity to have 2 male Kims with you tonight. So I know that's an odd thing, but I know Kim Alberty as well. I know he's a good businessman and would be a very good neighbor. I just wanted to share a few things. First of all, full disclosure, this is like small town North Dakota. April, who is one of your commissioners, is my daughter-in-law's sister. Also with me here tonight is Tammy Gerber, who lives at 321 6th Street Northwest. So she's in the northernmost townhouse in that development adjacent to the property you're talking about. She is my son's mother-in-law, my daughter-in-law's mother. So this is small town North Dakota. And Tom, I know that you used to live at the end of the block we are on, so you're familiar with the neighborhood as well. Just a little background that I think might help. And I'm not here to advocate either for or against your zoning change, just to give you some information to help you make a good decision. So to make that clear, first of all, I think it's important to know that when this was the city of Riverside, which we've been here 41 years in the neighborhood. We were in a townhouse adjacent to the park entrance for the first 3.5 or 4 years, and then have been in the home we're in on First Avenue Northwest since then. And I was actually on the Riverside City Council for 4 years back in the 1980s. So have watched a lot of things ebb and flow, including some of the zoning things that went on when it was the city of Riverside. what has changed in the neighborhood over those years that might be helpful for all of you to know about is that in those years, times were tough, and I know the city at that time was willing to do whatever it could to help the city grow, to help business thrive and start and so on. So there were a lot of zoning changes that occurred. In fact, the building, which used to be the Harley Davidson dealership and is now Dakota Cat on 6th Street and along Main, was the ASCS office way back in those days. And the entrances along 6th Street were offices, not light industrial kinds of things. So that all changed when the Harley Davidson shop came in, and that's one of the things that I think a lot of people have noted. I had mentioned, and I think just to full disclosure also about the things that Cindy talked about, I had emailed her because I saw this come through the neighborhood app, and I knew there were some concerns about it, questions that were asked, so I wanted to communicate a little bit. And I think a lot of things have improved in the neighborhood, and I just want to touch on some of those. The area just to the north of that building, now the Dakota Cat building, when Larry Weil was the city planner, we worked on that together because it became kind of a boneyard for that facility for a while and was really sort of an eyesore to the neighborhood. He worked with them to make sure that they did something about it. They expanded their building, put a lot of those things inside, to their credit. He also asked them to put a fence up, which they did, but unfortunately it was a chain link fence with no screening. But they had already cleaned up the lot, so I think the neighborhood was pretty satisfied that they had been at least making an attempt to be good neighbors. When the building went in to the north of 2nd Avenue and along 6th Street on the west side of 6th, the window company, I know Larry worked very hard to ensure some of the buffers that Lisa was talking about there as well. And so there are trees. First of all, everything in that building faces west, not east. So the access is not from 6th, it's from the industrial area. And that's a benefit to the neighborhood, I believe. And there are trees there and so on that were also planted as a buffer. And so I think the city has done a good job of trying to do its part to create a buffer. And then, of course, the area to the north of the townhomes that we're talking about now, where Agassiz building is, also does everything facing west. And what faces east is just their wall and the trees that were mentioned earlier. So first, I want to commend everyone for trying to do their part to do this. This neighborhood obviously has some challenges. On one hand, it's a wonderful neighborhood for those of us that live here and have for a long time, with a beautiful park and so on. The challenge is that there's only one access to the neighborhood for really, from a practical standpoint, and that's off of Main Avenue onto 6th Street for the residents that live here. And let me touch on a couple of the problems that have happened, both and the good, the bad, and the ugly, and I guess in a way I can talk about. When the Main Avenue project was done, the original plan, as many of you might know, was that if you came from the west and tried to get into this neighborhood, you would not have been able to come along Main Avenue and take a left turn into this neighborhood as you can now. The original plan had a median there, and you essentially, when the public meetings were held and so on, the people living in the neighborhood were told, well, you can turn over by the grain elevators there on the Stockyards Road and come in on 2nd Avenue. So, property values have been spoken about. I mean, think about that, trying to sell a home and having people, a lot of people being forced to drive through an industrial park to get to your house. Obviously, that would have been a problem. So I began working with the North Dakota Department of Transportation, who was heavily involved in that project, of course, to take a look at that. And Grant Levi, who was heading that department up at the time, was very good to work with. He took a look at it and said, yeah, you're right. This isn't right, because I pointed out to him that it was a landlocked neighborhood, that to the south, we have, of course, the Cheyenne River, and then to the east, it loops around into the park. We have the park and the river there. To the north, we have railroad tracks, and to the west, of course, we have the commercial industrial area. And so really the only reasonable residential access is off of Main Avenue onto 6th Street. And so the DOT was good enough to work with the city and to change that interchange and that access rather, and we're very thankful for that as a neighborhood. I know. I mean, I imagine a lot of the residents aren't even aware of that, but I think it's something that was done. By the way, when we talk about the Armour Park neighborhood, back when this was the city of Riverside, that was called Oak Leaf Park. That's sort of a sidebar that has nothing to do with this discussion, other than think a lot of us like that a lot better, and we need to talk to the park district and the city about that at some point. At any rate, there are a couple issues that I just wanted to touch on, and most of them actually have been discussed already this evening, and that is appropriate buffers. The question I had when I think I saw Cindy's concern expressed, and when I looked simply at the agenda item and the fact that you're changing R3 to heavy commercial, obviously that's more than one step, and buffers are important. If the property owners, the people who are purchasing the property are, and it certainly sounds like they are willing to work with landowners, with the adjacent property owners to ensure a good and reasonable buffer there, I think that goes light years toward hopefully alleviating any concerns. And one of the things that I think we should talk about, however, is or that you should be aware of, and I realize this may not be directly associated with a zoning change like this, but maybe it is. And that is, we talked about access coming on 7th rather than 6th. The question is, how do they get to 7th? Because that doesn't go through to Main Avenue. So they have to come in on Second Avenue, either from the west or from the east. If they come from the west, they'd be coming from that Stockyards Road through the industrial area, which it would seem is the most appropriate. If they come from the east, they'd be coming up 6th Avenue, or 6th Street, pardon me, to 2nd Avenue, and then turning west to get to 7th Avenue. So, or 7th Street, I apologize. So those are important considerations for this reason. When the Main Avenue project was done, if you remember, there was a frontage road along Main Avenue in a lot of the areas, and truck traffic really could not get very, very easily around the corner and ebb and flow around that turn on the frontage road to get into this area. And I've explained the benefits of that change in the interchange. The downside is that trucks now have easy access. And if you turn off of Main Avenue going north on 6th Street, you'll see a sign, if you look for it, off to your right that says no trucks. Problem is that is not observed, nor is it enforced. So if you also drive that street, you'll see the terrible shape that it's in. And I think one of the valid concerns that has been expressed is that, as you all know, when you get to city street repair, the burden for that falls on the adjacent property owners. Yet it's not those residential property owners that are causing that damage. So anything the city can do to try to inform the current inhabitants of the industrial park area in that area that, hey, you need to use is it 8th Street or 9th Street? I forget now, over on the west. You need to use that access to your area, not 6th Street, even though it might save you a couple of blocks when you're driving in. That's not permitted. That's a no truck street. I think that would go a long way toward making the neighborhood a lot happier, and just share that for the good of the order. Those are the main things I wanted to share, and I guess I would leave it to the wisdom of the commission to deal with the issue as you see fit. One of the things you might think about, and Tim may have the best advice for you on this, but again, having been I've been in the state legislature for 26 years, but I was on that city council for 4 years, and I know one of the options you have is either to recommend the zoning change that's requested, or to leave the zoning the same, or maybe make a different change. Instead of heavy commercial, maybe it's heavy industrial, maybe it's heavy commercial light industrial, which is another zoning category, I believe. And then that would perhaps require either a zoning variance or a conditional use permit or something else in order for someone to do something different with the property that zoning might allow. But that, of course, then will require a lot of conversation with adjacent property owners again, and might be another option to ensure that everyone's happy. But I've heard what Kim Alberti has to say, and he is an honest fellow and a good businessman. And I think if the neighbors would sit down with him, that hopefully they could alleviate a lot of the concerns. I do want to allow Tammy Gerber to make a comment here or ask questions if she has any, because again, she owns that unit to the far north in that townhouse area. So Tammy, if you want to slide over so they can see you.
I will slide.
And maybe.
And down.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm Tammy Gerber. I've been in my townhouse for 12 and a half years. When I first saw this, I was like, oh no, losing all the grass. When I started thinking about it, so I am like right there, I do see vehicles coming on the grass. For the last 10 and a half years or 10 years, I'm the one that's been mowing on that north side because the owner of this storage units and everybody in these townhomes, all 11 of them, will attest that this stuff is always knee high. We're calling the city. It's got to get mowed because we're getting gardener snakes, all these other weird animals. And so a lot of times, maybe twice a year, that grass would get mowed. When I think about that, I really don't care that I'm not going to be seeing that tall grass anymore or all of that junk but all the junk that's, been stored in that fence, which has now been cleaned up. Yes. So I'm just looking at how it's looked for the last 12 years. And then we get the letter stating, get all your stuff off our property, which really burned me because I don't have anything on the property, but yet I spent, a good hour every week mowing that lawn to make it look nice for all of us, on that north side. So seeing the seed place, they keep it very nice. I would be out there mowing on the weekend. They're always out there on Mondays mowing. They mow weekly. They keep it very nice and clean. They have people that come out of the back and, for their breaks. I've got 2 little dogs. Everybody knows that. And they would bark at them. And there's, one guy who's trying to say hi to him, begin, to quit barking, be nice for her. So, I mean, all the employees that I see are very nice going, in and out when they're on their break and that. They do keep the place up very nice compared to how we've been seeing it for the last 12 years. And you guys have talked about, the buffer, the trees. So there's still going to be some green there. We're going to have, the green trees over the years that will divide from a building. And then somebody brought up about, a line of townhomes, if somebody would build that. I think I personally would rather see another Agassiz seed behind me with the greens versus, a bunch of townhomes where you get a lot more traffic and everything. So, I've kind of switched both ways, in the end, whatever is going to happen will happen. But it sounds like, Agassiz seed is looking at us, it is our homes, and we do, our balconies are on second story. So when we sit out there, we can see most of the roofs. And so, I think it's all an important thing. So I think, having the greens and, the buffer, you guys had talked about putting a fence on the north side, which I think is a great idea because we do get in the wintertime, these 4-wheelers that go flying through there all the time, and granted it's just open area, but little kids do play back there. So I think that would alleviate that, plus random vehicles driving through there all the time too. So, and yeah, another issue is snow. I know at least Joe, who lives next to me, we have an issue, and I call the city every year on this. So we're at a dead end street. And so they go north, they plow, they turn around, they come back. The first outlet is my driveway and then Joe's driveway. So we get a ton of snow, and it's, I'm not kidding you, 10 feet out into the street. And this isn't really anything with Agassiz, but that's why I was questioning, are they going to put a road there? I was thinking that might help with the snow removal, although I'd rather not have a road there. So I'm just hoping, somehow, somebody could address that, which I'll address come winter time again. But it's good to know that as of now, anyway, there's not a road that's going to be squeezed in that area because it's not, that much room. So, but yeah.
So thanks, Tammy, for sharing that. I thought you'd want to hear from one of the other residents there as well. And, I certainly trust the commission to make the right decision. And we all recognize living in this neighborhood that it's a challenge because of that close adjacency and the radical change in zoning that occurs there. So I guess my only reason for being here is to give you a little of that background and to urge you to whatever you do to ensure that there's an appropriate buffer, whatever you can do to minimize the continued industrial encroachment, if you will.
All right. I think, Kim Koppelman, I'm going to clarify one thing for you, just because I think there's something that didn't quite make it through translation for you.
All
the
right.
proposal is to change the property zoning directly west of the townhomes to light industrial, not heavy commercial.
Okay, I did not have the agenda, and I read that incorrectly then. And that's probably, yeah, if it's heavy commercial, light industrial, that's probably an appropriate change. And yeah, so
Okay, just clarifying. All right, any other comments from the public?
Yes, we have a Sadie who's been waiting to ask a question, and then someone posted a question in the Q&A looking for clarification about when the meeting notices were sent out. So I don't know which you'd like to address first. But.
Honestly, I'm not really in a position to address the question about the meeting notices. So let's take Sadie. Go ahead if you're on.
You hear me?
Yes.
So this is actually Casey Oster using Sadie's computer at 311 6th Street Northwest. So just east, directly east of where this building is going to be taking place in coming years or whatnot. And my only I agree. I don't really want this to happen or anything, but some question that didn't really come up or anything. And I know that it's not directly west of us isn't actually going to be built on in the next 5 or 10 years, but what would be the building size that they were thinking of building there? Because if I think of a 30-foot buffer plus your building that they're going to build, there's no room in that area for anything else. Like there's nothing there. Like you probably have like 100 feet zone right there. So you have a 60-foot building. Where all these vehicles going to go? I just have concerns of that whole, it's a kind of a cramped area basically. That's my concern.
I think the property owners made it fairly clear that they don't actually have a true plan for what they're going to build there yet. And that anything that would get built would need to come back through this commission to get approval if it were not. Tim, is that correct? I don't want to lie to the guy.
If they were zone light industrial, they would be required to meet the setback requirements of the R3 district, which is the adjacent residential district. If it's light industrial next to light industrial, they don't have a lot of yard requirements. They only have those requirements because they're adjacent to the R3 zoning district.
Right.
Which would include the buffering, setbacks regarding height, those types of issues.
Right.
This is Nate, just for clarification, the width from the fence line of the homes to the fence line of the storage area is 183 feet. I think it also should be noted, just for the residents to the east, that and I appreciate the comments from the previous two people that talked about the area and living in the area. If this were to be twin homes, which it could be twin home, or it could be an apartment home right now. And Tim, I don't know the exact zoning ordinances, but tomorrow somebody could come in and permit a 3-story apartment building and essentially put garages 5 feet off of the fence line of those condos. And from the previous person that spoke, the lady, I don't remember her name, but that would generate much more traffic on 6th Street than the Agassiz addition will ever generate, mostly because they're not going to ever access 6th Street. So I only bring that up because if I were living there, I would agree with what the previous lady said, is that I'd rather have the Agassiz seat as my neighbor than another 30-unit apartment building with 60 cars.
All right. Thank you everybody for your comments. Tim, do you want to try and address the question about meeting notices?
I did.
Okay. All right. Were there any other comments from the public that we haven't addressed so far? Seeing none, we're going to close that portion of the meeting. Commissioners.
Question, Tom, for Tim. Tim, I read through the ordinances, the difference between heavy commercial versus light industrial, and maybe you can explain why light industrial would be better. From what I read in the ordinances, it looks like with heavy commercial, some of the uses of the property would have to be approved through a conditional use permit. Whereas under light industrial, a lot of those uses are included. What would be the advantage of having a heavy commercial designation instead, which would then require a review of the conditional use permit, at whatever point, versus just allowing those additional uses? Because it seems like in the light industrial, we can get into a little bit more, what should I say, intense uses.
Thank you, Commissioner Thorstad. So I think it's really because of the applicant is Agassiz Seed. Agassiz Seed would need that light industrial zoning district to continue to operate on that property. And so their request necessitated our need to recommend that if they want that lot to be used for expansion of Agassiz Seed, light industrial would be the appropriate zoning district. City staff is pretty confident in our buffering requirements as well as the setbacks from uses such as an apartment or a townhome or a condo unit, that the setbacks are increased for those light industrial districts. I would say the other option, due to the unique circumstances of the site, I would certainly justify a planned unit development. I always go against planned unit development because it appears at sometimes that you're just creating a district for yourself for the specific use, and we should rely on our own ordinances to protect each other's properties. However, in unique circumstances, a PUD does make sense. So, after what I hadn't anticipated happening, because this property has remained vacant for so long, potentially a PUD is a good option here.
Yeah, my only concern would be is, we all think, and I hope Eggsy's there for eternity, for centuries to come. But what happens is all of a sudden Agassiz Seed business explodes, and they're forced to move to a new spot. So now the next occupant comes in, and depending on how it's zoned, their and what parameters are on it, their use may be something unexpected or not anticipated for that area. Now, if you have a PUD, I think that allows us at least to have a certain level of control of what might replace it. And I know we don't anticipate that anytime in the future, but I've seen that happen before, where all of a sudden something changes hands for whatever reason, and the property becomes something different than what was envisioned when it was first approved. So I'm just trying to throw out what might work best for Agassiz, and also make these neighbors a little more confident with the fact that what they may get is what they really get and what they'll have for long term. And the only other comment I'll make, and you can comment if you want, Tim, is I think Jerry put up a note there, and I think that is something that's really important. If we got trucks straying off into those neighborhoods to the east side there, or going up and trying to turn around at the end there, I think being an old sign guy and the mayor as well, we got poor signage. It should be very clear as to traffic control. And I know that's not what we're taking up, but I think it's very important that the city staff, engineering, and the street department takes a look at that to help alleviate some of that problem. I won't alleviate all of it, but help alleviate some of that.
Thank you.
Members of the Planning Commission, I just wanted to note for the public, you see there's a lot of chat going on. Just so the public is aware, that is an open record. So if they're posting things that are private that they don't want the public to be aware of, that will become public. So just so that everybody is aware that as part of the public meeting, it's public, including addresses and the comments that they're making. Thank you.
If I could, Commissioner Thorstad, I do just want to again reiterate, use, I get it. I think that we should be confident in the landscape standard that has buffering requirements, the setbacks that we have for different types of uses. If we're not confident in that, or if this is a unique enough site, then the PUD is a good idea. If we're simply going to try to restrict use throughout the community, I think that's the wrong use of a PUD. We've done it a lot in the past. And what ends up happening is you create these little pockets of very specific uses that can be used throughout the community. And it makes it very difficult for redevelopment. And I'm just going to caution against it. I don't disagree with you specifically for this case because it is a unique case, but it's not a tool I like to use a lot. So I appreciate your comments.
Well, I concur with you, and I agree with that. The only thing is you'd worry about is the facility turns into a manufacturing where they have exhaust and stuff like that. The way as proposed by EGSI, that's not going to be an issue. The way they described what their plans are, especially long term. So the only thing I'm throwing out there is something we should consider beyond the scope of what it's planned to be. So I appreciate your comments, and I agree with that. We don't want to go around doing that everywhere around the city. That's not a good practice. So thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I want to echo what Mike said, Tim, and I do want to also say I did hear you when you spoke during the first item tonight and said that you don't like to do those PUDs, as you just indicated again. What we've heard tonight, though, is this is one of those areas that is an abrupt transition. We'll call it an abrupt transition. That I do believe we need to provide as much protection as we can to that residential use that's adjacent. And what we've heard tonight are a lot of promises by the future owner. I agree that this is they're probably valid, those promises, but however, as a city, you have to think about the long game, right? And so some things like they say there will be no access onto the street, but there's no negative access easement in place. There's no, so you are able to control the buffer now and in the future, but there's a lot of other things that were stated tonight that aren't within our control. And there's no definite plan on the board to give them any assurance as to what that intended future use 15 years or more down the road might be. So I do believe that this might be a good opportunity to make use of the PUD for good use, make good use of the PUD to create that transitional zoning that doesn't quite exist in our given zoning.
I would just also point out that it just seems like we need to know more of what might happen here and how much traffic it might generate. And I'm realizing I was remiss in not looking up again what it is that should be in a proposal for a zoning change. Should we know more from this proposal about what they want to do rather than, as April said, we've heard some promises and those might be great, but you make the zoning change and you don't know what might happen. So could we even just request that there be more information about the concept of this and the additional traffic and the impact on traffic in the neighborhood? I'm wondering.
As a PUD, we could require more. As a straight zoning,
PUD would do it.
A straight zoning, they would be able to do anything permitted by right within the LI zoning district. And that's so kind of what Commissioner Thorstad shows concern over. Certain manufacturing may be incompatible with the proximity to the homes. So that PUD gives us that opportunity to ask what you're asking for, Commissioner Rocco.
Thank you.
Say, Tim, this is Nate. If we did a PUD, would you assign it to a certain zoning classification, or to just be a straight PUD?
You could do detailed development plans, which would require the applicant to provide building parameters essentially for what they're going to build, even so far as to have architectural plans approved specifically by the commission. My preference is to do district standards. So you state it would be seed cleaning, whatever Agassiz would propose, and you would also include yard requirements such as a setback from the property line, buffer yard requirements, fencing, those types of things. We could spell that all out in district regulations specific to this property. That way, if he changes plans, gets a different architect, wants to do an expansion, he knows exactly what he can do, rather than being tied to one specific architectural plan at the time of approval.
Tim, would that flow into another meeting, or could we adjust it to a PUD at this point?
So what I would propose is, if that were the direction of the commission, and I apologize, Ms. Chair, to answer the applicant here, but to everybody, I would propose one of two choices. One, tonight is the concept phase. We've had the public hearing. We direct the applicant to adjust their application to come up with detailed development plans, which would include district standards or architectural plans of the lot that's proposed as light industrial. Or we ask them to, or we deny the application, and then they have to come back and go through a public hearing process again, concept, and another public hearing for detail. So I believe both chances give the public another opportunity to be heard. One adds another month essentially to their process and additional fees.
So I'm going to speak just for a second. I've been thinking about this, and there's a couple of things that I would suggest. I appreciate all of the comments related to, because it is true that if you just simply zone it light industrial, then we have this issue with, it could be any number of different things that, plans change, right? So that would potentially be an issue. So I kind of do like the PUD thing. I think that a good course of action at this particular point would be to ask them to adjust the application, which saves them the month that we're talking about, but simultaneously, now that everybody kind of understands the process, simultaneously get a meeting with the local residents and actually talk through some of these things that we went through tonight. This isn't really the forum for these changes to get made. It's not really the question. I've allowed it to go on. It's been good conversation, those types of things. But if you want my recommendation, which I can't move this, but if you want my recommendation, that's kind of the direction I would go.
Can I just respond to a question or a point that was made in the chat by Cindy? She was asking about whether we might actually drive by the property, and I'd like her to know that I did that today. So I did look around. So I don't know about others here who can affirm that they're familiar with the property. But I do also, Chair Tom, I like that suggestion that we proceed with having them come back with this altered as a PUD. And then that gives also the residents much more idea of what it is they could be looking at and whether they can support it and whether adjustments can be made as that proposal is put together.
Tim, I'm going to speak for the owner and the buyer. I think they'd be open to a PUD with a generalized site plan to give some assurances that there wouldn't be access onto 6th Street, and a simple district standard that would kind of outline more to the fact of what they intend to use the property for.
Yeah,
I would also highlight, and we are very open to speaking with the neighbors. I foresee that we'll hopefully find a middle ground. I don't believe that we will satisfy every request of the neighbors that we heard tonight, but I think we can do a pretty good job to get close to letting them be comfortable with what they're proposing on the site.
Mr. Chair, I think the Planning Commission could certainly require in their motion that they have a neighborhood meeting prior to coming back with detailed development plans.
Yes, I know. So I would be open to
And
that.
I would be willing to make that motion to come back as a PUD and to have a meeting, and whether we have to table this for now or what exactly has to be done. I'm willing to make that motion.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to ask the developer to revise the application to a PUD and also get a meeting with the concerned citizens in the neighborhood. and come back next month with an updated proposal in the form of a PUD with more community agreement. Is that basically what you said?
Hey, Tom,
Yes.
can I ask a quick question to Tim?
Sure.
Is City Hall open to holding meetings of that type or not?
Not at this point, no. If we move to a phase that we can have a space available, we will make that available. Otherwise, I'd encourage you to do a Zoom meeting with them if you can.
Which isn't as much fun, I understand, but it's kind of the world we live in. So if we're going to get moving forward, we have to be open to both.
And we'll provide Nate with all of the neighborhood addresses. I think the 150 feet is intended because super majority is required if more than 20% of people within 150 feet protest. And so that's the reasoning. But you know, to get input from the neighborhood, we'll give them the whole neighborhood. So
sounds like they have a pretty good system over there too for the neighborhood. So that should work out well. All right, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, same sign. Motion passed.
Say before we, Tom, before we leave that, support the motion, but maybe one question. There was some comments about change in signage or additional signage, and I'm kind of thinking maybe some type of traffic calming or something along those lines could be considered to help avoid truck traffic going down the wrong path. So where I'm going with that is, where does the city get involved in the signage changes in the neighborhood process? Is that something where the city public works needs to be part of that meeting, or is that something that happens outside of that community meeting, neighborhood meeting?
it might not hurt for us to have some ears on that. You know, just to know what's going on. It saves us maybe one public meeting that we have to have later. So good point. I'll relay that to Public Works and Engineering.
Okay, thank you. All right, item number 5 is a public hearing, A20-43 Westview 5th Edition, replat and rezoning from R1 SM, which is mixed 1 and 2 family dwellings, to PUD, planned unit development of lots 20 and 21, block 3 of Westview 1st Edition, City of West Fargo, North Dakota, Burning Hearts Church.
Tom, first, before we begin, I would like to recuse myself from the deliberations and vote by the commission. I have a direct, I'm directly affected by this request. So I have instead participated as a citizen in my comments, and I'm going to recuse myself if that's all right.
Okay, noted.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is for a replat and rezoning to develop townhomes, office buildings, and expanding a church facility. The applicant has submitted an application, preliminary plat, and site plan with building renderings. The site plan and preliminary plat currently provides 22 two-story townhomes, 2 one-story office buildings, and a proposed future church addition. The lots are proposed to be developed as townhomes and office condos and will require district standards to consider permitted uses and yard requirements. The current site plan shows the proposed commercial office buildings is set back 34.9 feet from 40th Avenue, whereas the proposed townhomes are set back 39.11 feet from 40th Avenue East. The required setback from 40th Avenue East as the designated street in this corridor overlay district is 45 feet. The applicant will be required to provide justification for the deviation from the required setback to be considered allowed in the detailed development plans or meet the required setback. Engineering and public works are in discussion on the components of infrastructure and how best to serve the property with essential infrastructure. Access is limited to the property as it is adjacent to an arterial roadway. There is one existing access for the property, and the subdivision is designed to provide future connections should it be necessary with development to the east. A traffic count from 2018 estimated the daily vehicle count on 40th Avenue East as 10,960 vehicles per day. The engineering department estimates the arterial can handle approximately 18,000 cars per day. Using an estimated average of 10 vehicle trips per household per day, engineering estimates that 22 townhouse units will add an additional 220 vehicle trips per day in the area. Based on the size of the two office buildings and the church expansion, engineering believes the impact to the area's traffic flow from the new development will be minimal. Notices were sent to property owners within 150 feet, and applicable agencies and departments were notified. We received comments from the engineering department, and they indicated that they did not have any concerns with potential for increased traffic to and from the area. We did receive multiple emails from residents who live north of the proposed development. Most of the comments were primarily concerned about the potential for increased traffic at the intersection of 40th Avenue South and 7th Street East. These emails were attached to this packet for your review. There were also a couple of concerns about potential buffering or screening to the north of the church parking lot between the residential homes and the church. Maintaining compatibility with surrounding uses will provide consistency with city plans and ordinances. Increasing employment opportunities and commercial development within this area is consistent with the comprehensive plan. It is recommended that the City Planning and Zoning Commission approve the proposed application in concept on the basis that it is consistent with city plans and ordinances, with the conditions of approval, which would need to be satisfied prior to a review of the detailed development plans and future consideration by the City Commission, are as follows. 1, concerns of adjacent neighborhoods are given due consideration. 2, district standards include provisions to require but not limit the 4-440 supplementary district regulations, section 4-449-A landscaping standards, 4-450 off-street parking and loading requirements, and 4-460 sign requirements. Consideration of any comments from engineering and public works regarding servicing the property should also be considered. The developer is here tonight to help answer any questions that I might not be able to answer for you. This is a public hearing.
Thank you, Malachi. This is a public hearing, and with that, I would like to open it up to comments from the public.
Yeah, yes, there is one person with their hand raised. I'll let them speak now.
Very good. Go ahead if you can hear us.
It's listed as the name Kirchhoffner. I don't know if you can hear us or not here, but.
Go ahead.
I see you raised your hand again. You are unmuted. I don't know if you're maybe having technical issues on your end, but yeah, I have you, so you're allowed to talk.
I know technology is wonderful. I completely understand sometimes when it's not working the way we think it should. Are you muted on your end?
It shows them as unmuted, but if they're joining from a computer, maybe it didn't pick up their mic correctly or something.
Well, we're not going to avoid them, but are there any other comments from the public while we figured out the technical details on that one?
Yeah, we have one from Tony. I can unmute Tony here in just a second. Then for Kirchhoffner, I'll just set you as muted, and if you get it working, we can readdress.
Tony, are you there?
Yes, I think so.
There you are.
Well, okay. Well, I didn't know. I realized how this is going to work, so I have to inflict my father's picture on you. Sorry about that. My name is Tony Sukol. I'm 38 7th Street North, or East, I mean, and I'm at the northeast corner of the property, north of the property, where there's a parking lot, or actually a big garden right now. Most of my comments are related to traffic, I believe. the 18 study, it was summarized. I haven't seen it. But I think there's some things that have changed even since then considerably. But I want to go over the school, which right now is not operating at full steam. So it's kind of hard to tell. The added residential units to the north of us, which have one outlet onto 7th, which I don't probably or think are reflected, and the new buildings, of course, which are. Right now, even with school not being in session as it usually is, we can oftentimes have a backup from 40th up to our driveway and beyond. It doesn't happen that bad real often, but it does. And I'm kind of wondering what the impacts are of the office buildings unloading out onto 7th, for example, and going both ways. And there's no stoplight at 7th to take a left turn onto 40th. Also, the people leaving the parking lot onto 40th from the south entrance can only turn right. And I suspect that there may be a great many more U-turns at the next one on down, which I think is 4th. Although there may be a stoplight there, I hear, at some point. So I have some concerns about kind of how traffic is going to really happen here since the 18 study. Things have probably changed quite a bit since then. We've been here for 3 years now and have seen changes that may not have been anticipated. And I would also like to mention that I was glad that there was looked to be a considerable buffer along the north side of the parking lots, which I appreciate. And I think we've planted several trees along there, which hopefully will grow large and help buffer whatever becomes there.
Okay, thank you, Tony.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. I think the traffic stuff is probably the biggest concern that people have. Tim, do we have any engineering or any traffic folks that are on the call that can address that? Because I think everybody's going to have that same question.
Yeah, Jerry Wallace from engineering is on right now. He might be able to help answer any questions you have.
I mean, my guess is people are going to have questions that he's not able to answer yet, specifically related to, I think the best that we can get right now is, what traffic is really doing, because I know there's going to be questions about, well, what about putting a stoplight? Who's going to pay for it? All those types of things. But Jerry, if you could help us out here, I think we might be able to handle a lot of questions.
Sure thing, commissioners. I'll try to do my best. I guess to this point in time, engineering has reviewed the basic site plan, and just given the expected trips generated from the office buildings, we currently aren't really viewing traffic impacts to be statistically significant. If anything, I think with the concerns that we've gotten via email and calls and whatnot, this may accelerate, I think, the city's position at looking at possibly conducting a study of if a signal light is needed in the future here at 7th. But like I said, there just isn't the engineering department at this point doesn't foresee significant traffic increases with this proposed development.
Okay, thank you, Jerry. Are there any other comments from the public? I don't know, did the Kirchhoffners, were they able to get on?
Did type the phone number in too. If anybody's hearing this and is able to call in, they certainly can try that.
Yeah, I can certainly try and ask the Kirchhoffners to unmute again and see if they can talk. Otherwise, we do have another person under the name Race.
Let's try Kirchhoffners again right quick, and if that doesn't work, if we can tell that they're still on, you know, I don't know if they're able to even see the chat, but I can really easily give you the phone number. Why don't I just do that? If you can hear me but can't read the chat, the phone number to dial in is 312-626-6799. And it will ask you for a password, which is the West Fargo zip code 58078. So while we're waiting there, let's bring on the other panelists the other panelist guests, whatever we have them labeled as, to speak.
What was the code word?
Whoever. Rice.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, this is Jessica Reese. We're at Osgood Parkway South. And I have Connie Kirchhoffner with me, my neighbor as well. Okay, so I'm gonna turn that off a second. Okay, she was just calling in, but we'll be on the same link because we're here together.
Awesome.
So we have some questions here and maybe you can answer them for us. The first thing is we're wondering, did the sale go through with these lots with Burning Hearts? Are they actually purchased already with Burning Hearts Church? Has Burning Hearts Church purchased these lots and they're developing these as we speak?
This is part of their due diligence period. They're requiring that they are able to get through this before they make that sale. But
so the sale did not go through?
Not yet, no. This is a part of it for them.
Okay, and then the other question I have, the townhomes that are going in, are they going to be income-based?
No. But that's not something that this commission can nor should take into consideration in their consideration.
Okay, I'm just wondering because I just got my tax bill, and according to what I pay for taxes, I think we should have some say on what's going in over there because it's going to affect our values of our homes here. We're just citizens, what's actually going to be going in there.
Tim, can I ask a question? I know it's in here someplace and you can answer it faster, or Malachi probably can answer faster than me looking it up. What is that zoned, the stuff where they're proposing the townhomes, well, how is that zoned today?
It's zoned R-1 SM.
Okay.
And that means?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, for those who don't know, can you explain that?
So for R-1 SM is sort of mixed 1 and 2 family dwellings. So like you could have homes in there, you could have townhomes. So really the PUD, what the PUD is doing is allowing them not only to do townhomes over there, but mostly to add an addition on, and then also the 2 office buildings. So as part of the lot that the church is currently on is also zoned as R-1 SM. And our zoning ordinance is kind of confusing because you would think, well, a church isn't really a single family or multiple mixed 1 and 2 family house. But if you look in our ordinances, anything that's allowed in the R-1A is also allowed in the R-1 SM up to and including a church. And so that's how the church came to be there. But in order for those 2 office buildings that they want to develop to go with there, they would have to change it to a PUD because it's basically taking up the same space where the church is as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Was there anything else?
So we are concerned also about the noise and the vibrations currently with what's going on with the building, how it's shaking the homes here and cracking the walls. I mean, you can totally feel the vibrations in our homes at this point from the developing thus far.
Which development is causing the vibrations from your homes?
Just north of us across 40th here from our homes. We're on Osgood Parkway.
So there's development going on to your north. Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Something being built on that corner just to the west of us, isn't there, Tim?
Yeah, they're currently, the city's doing an improvement district for Westview 4th edition, which is the office park development.
I haven't read, well, I would be speaking out of turn, but for general construction, I guess I've never really run into shaking foundations.
Hey, come over to my house and you can feel it
I believe you.
all day long.
I don't know the nature of the construction though. That's what I was trying to get to.
If you drive by 40th on the north side, look at their equipment. It vibrates the walls, everything.
Oh, that stuff that's going on to the west of to the west of this property.
Request.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. That I did see, yes. Okay.
So we're not, of course, we're not in favor of it at all. It's such a mix and mash of different items and, you know, residential and business and
Churches.
Say, Tom.
Yeah.
I got a question here. Maybe a question for Tim. Has there been any other development proposals for this area? Either the rectangular area west of the church or the outlots on the church lot?
Lots of inquiries over the years. The church had initially intended to expand. One of the big problems with this lot, which we've had with other churches in our community along arterial roadways, is they go into it thinking as a church, a nonprofit, they won't have to pay taxes. However, special assessments are not a tax. It's a cost for improvements. So they have a tremendous amount of special assessments on the property and simply can't make it work financially. So that's what happened here, not without warning. And Faith has chosen to kind of transfer their resources to their north property here. So this is an example of how they're trying to efficiently use the space and kind of work with other people that they may expand the church for a different church, but expand the church and utilize the parking for the office uses on the lot, and then sell another portion of it to a developer that can develop essentially under the R1 SM or R2 district standards for the townhomes that they're proposing.
Then maybe a follow-up question to that. The proposed expansion of the church is maybe a future, but the commercial development in the corner of their outlots, would you say that that's something, you know, consistent with our comprehensive plan of sort of for the city as a general?
I don't want to take away Malachi's comments here, but that's what our staff report addresses. The increased employment opportunities is something consistent with our comprehensive plan. We want to have people that are able to travel short distances to places of work or places of service, such as chiropractors, dentists, what have you. Our previous comprehensive plan, the 2008 comprehensive plan, actually had highlighted this portion of area north of 40th, west of Cheyenne Street for convenience commercial. And the intent behind that was just what was later memorialized in our comprehensive plan, that we wanted more employment opportunities, more service opportunities within areas of the city that aren't necessarily, you know, your commercial corridors. So yes, in our analysis, we did consider this consistent with the comprehensive plan. That being said, PUD gives us the opportunity to ensure compliance or compatibility through additional means if it seems appropriate. It was more appropriate to do that than to cut out a little piece of this and zone it commercial. That would have been a little bit leaning toward the direction of spot zoning.
And maybe one last follow-up question. So the rectangular piece where the townhomes are proposed, that's still zoned as this R1 SM do you feel that that zoning is compatible with the comp plan, or do you feel like, that zoning could be more, could it be a candidate for something other than residential type properties? Given its location and given the comp plan and other factors, I realize it is abutting residential, but.
I think it could. They're not asking for a zoning change, and the
Right.
property was already entitled. So when a property is already entitled through already being zoned, we generally don't mess with it in a comprehensive plan unless we're looking to see it changed. It was a vacant piece of land. There was a church on the property. The church owned that, so we didn't really mess with it. But yes, I believe it could be changed.
Kind of an odd shaped piece. And so fitting
Yeah,
something in there is going to be a challenge with only a sort of one way in and out.
Yeah, we scratched our heads as to why that was split the way it was. I
Yeah.
still haven't been able to figure that out.
Right.
Tim, is it fair to say, or Malachi, sorry, I recognize this is your project, Malachi. Is it fair to say that the housing portion that they're proposing is allowed by right today?
Yeah, they could go pull a permit tomorrow, and it'll take a little while, for construction to start, but they could build what they're proposing there right now as it's zoned. Generally, the PUD portion, from my understanding, is just because they're adding the two commercial pieces onto the church property by the church.
Okay, before we get too far into this, because I've got some stuff too, were there any other comments from the public?
Yes, it looks like the Kaufners were able to rejoin, so we can give them another shot here to speak.
Go ahead.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, this is Constance Kirchhoffner, and I live at 6207 Osgood Parkway. My home is located directly to the south of all this development. I open up.
We lost you.
It appears you muted yourself on your phone. You might have to unmute.
Okay, go ahead. And it is very disheartening to look out and see all of this development in this area. Let's recap. As a citizen, and I've lived here 6 years, this is the third time we have been asked to rezone. And I'd like to know why. We were asked to get this area rezoned to the north on the corner of 40th and 4th Street East in West Fargo. It was turned down by the Planning and Zoning Commission. Last spring, during the COVID shutdown, I sent an email to Tim Solberg for the second request to have it turned down again. It was overturned. The Planning and Zoning Commission voted to allow shops to be built in the area of 40th Avenue and 4th Street East. We currently have an ongoing development which has caused a great deal of vibration in our homes in Osgood Parkway. There have been huge diggers, trucks, semis, everything going on all day long. I have a husband that's been recovering from a major surgery, and this has been detrimental to our health and our well-being. And I am very upset with this zoning and planning committee to allow urban development in a residential neighborhood. You have residential neighborhoods to the west, to the north, and to the south, and the school to the east. Why on earth are you allowing this redevelopment and rezoning? In the info set the church is asking us to rezone so it helps them financially by turning our neighborhood into a center of urban settings with multiple home dwellings, such as the lab rat townhomes that they have sent us in the descriptions. In addition, onto the church, which is huge in the back, and it will look directly, I will look directly out my north windows of my home to all of this development. And then they have not included in the plans that you sent us, which is very misleading, about the office buildings that they want to include in this development. So if we can't find out if the sale has gone through for the church, as my neighbor Jess Reese has said, how can we feel safe and feel that greed is not a pillar of this church that wants to come in and change this whole neighborhood? We have been living here in good faith. We want honest, good neighborhoods. We want a residential neighborhood. There are residential neighborhoods surrounding this area. So what does our neighborhood look like from 40th to 32nd? We have shops, we have apartments, we have single family homes, and some of those single family homes are up to $1 million homes. We have a park, we have single family homes. Then when you hit to 32nd Street, you have townhomes, offices, and shops. You have turning West Fargo into a mishmash of development, which has turned our neighborhood from 40th to 32nd into an urban looking style of development. Instead, we want family friendly residential neighborhoods living in a peaceful environment. I sincerely am asking the Planning and Zoning Commission to vote no for the request to rezone the lots 20 and 21. Please keep our neighborhoods residential, protect our lands. Please make a decision for a firm no to support residential neighborhoods.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other comments from the public?
There are no other hands raised at this time.
All right. Thank you all. We may come back to you with questions or whatever, so don't run away, please. We'll close that portion of the hearing though. Commissioners. Don't all speak at once. I'm going to throw my 2 cents out there with the risk of being shot at. But the townhome side of this, I think Malachi answered that one fairly straight up, that they could literally pull a permit to do that, and that's compatible. I have a question though. Do I see the plan properly in that there is an exit onto 40th, which would obviously be a right turn only, to the south of those proposed townhomes?
Yep, correct.
Okay, so that would solve some portion. I don't know how much. It would depend completely upon who lived there and where they worked, but that would, in theory, solve some portion of the traffic concern. From the office's perspective, those don't look to be really big to me, so they're probably, as you indicated, going to end up being dentist, chiropractor, something like that. Is there a way for us in a PUD to, so no offense to anybody that works at a call center, but for example, a call center would be a very high density number of people that would be in a smaller space. Is there any way for us to limit kind of what those might develop as?
I don't believe so, Tim.
Yeah, I can answer. Yes, you can limit use in a PUD. So if there's specific high density uses that you're concerned with. I do want to remind the Planning Commission that this is under consideration in concept. So any recommendations you may have regarding use could be forwarded to the applicant to be further developed in detailed development plans.
Yes, and I think that's what I was going to get to next. We're at the concept level of this. And if I'm not mistaken, Tim, Malachi, one of you can correct me, because I think you said this earlier, that nothing is happening with this property at this point as we speak. It's in the concept phase, which is helping the buyers and sellers actually make a decision. Is that correct?
Correct.
Good. Commissioners.
This is Joe. But if we approve it in concept, the concept of adding additional office space will be expected in some form to be able to go forward. I mean, because then there will be a transaction, the sale of the property with that expectation.
That's where recommendations based on comments of the chair there might be helpful. But I don't expect, if I were purchasing this property, I wouldn't purchase it until the last plat was signed and everything was approved. So I hope that they don't anticipate purchasing based on a concept approved.
Yeah, we don't know enough about them to really.
I mean, the city in the comprehensive plan has talked about this for quite a while, in that we're trying to allow compatible development with the neighborhoods. Tim, and you covered this pretty well as well. We're trying to allow compatible development in the neighborhoods that allow people to walk to work or bike to work or whatever. And obviously that doesn't work out for everybody, but it's the concept where you don't have to drive from, Horace to North Fargo to get groceries, that's
or just driving shorter distances even.
Right. So from that perspective, the concept is good. I mean, like we talked about on the last one, that, as long as we can control the reality, then I think I don't mind this idea. I'm not trying to upset anybody that called in, but I think the concept's not bad.
So just the office space there, it looks like it doesn't have its own parking. They'll be sharing the parking with the church. Is that the situation there? So
correct. So they're looking at extending the church's parking lot in that northeastern section of that lot, and then I'm assuming excess parking for the offices will be placed there, along with any overflow parking from the church.
Well, it looks like any parking for those office spaces are going to have to be in church property. And then I assume they'll have to have an easement for the entrance there, because the entrance comes in through the church parking lot also, correct?
I'm not sure about that, Tim.
Yeah, they'll have to.
Looks like it comes off 40th.
They'll have to have a shared access easement and shared parking agreement.
Yeah, and that would be similar to what you have over by Blarney Stone today. That whole development over there is kind of designed. Now we don't have it all. It's not all built out yet, but the concept was very similar to this. And if I could be completely honest, I would like to have, if you could have the perfect world, when I know you can't, but think about this for a second. Churches generally get used on Sunday, maybe Wednesday night. Wouldn't it be nice to be able to share the use of a church? Well, if that's the case, though, it makes perfect sense to share which I know we can't solve that one, but it does make perfect sense to share the use of a parking lot. I mean, we have a requirement for certain businesses to have a certain amount of parking, but if they're only operating certain hours, then another business can share that at the hours that they're not operating. That makes complete sense to me.
Just a point of reference here, which you're probably all aware of, but this is quite similar to what Prairie Heights Church did. They have their church in the middle. They have some single residential off to the west. They have a retail office in one of the corners, and they got townhomes just to the east of them as well. So this is not a unheard of concept for churches, as you know, especially if they're going to buy a larger property, to try to make it fiscally possible to make it work. So I understand a lot of people would rather just see straight residential, but this concept as proposed is not that much different than where the Prairie Heights property was at and how it was built.
At any time, I would be willing to accept a motion of some sort.
Tom, this is Eric. I guess I would, given all the consideration here, I would move to approve the motion as with the 3 recommendations as noted on the staff report.
I'll second that.
Did we add a provision, as the chair discussed, regarding limiting the uses to low traffic draw uses within the offices?
Are we including that because we're approving it as a PUD, so it would be included in that?
Well, yeah, but just to give them some direction on the potential language in the PUD at this point, that it's the preference to keep it.
I think that would be fair, because and to be honest with you, I mean, realistically, we're not going to approve it as a city, but we don't want them going forward thinking they could put a Casey's on the corner.
I'll amend my motion to include those conditions of the PUD, that the office space be limited to some type of low density use.
May I offer a friendly
Please do.
recommendation?
Yes.
Uses which meet the permitted uses of the COP district would be most appropriate.
That's what I meant to say, yeah.
Yeah, I thought that's what you meant.
I will still second that amended.
Sounds good. So we have a motion as amended on the table to approve the application with the 3 recommendations offered by staff, and another recommendation that we instruct the developer that they would be limited to fairly low density businesses or offices that meet the COP district. That was basically what we meant?
The permitted uses within the COP district.
Oh, it's close. Permitted uses within the COP district. All in favor of that signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. The motion is passed. Thank you. Thanks everybody for your input. We take that very seriously, actually. And it causes us to take note and make sure that we don't do something that's completely crazy. So we appreciate that. Item number 6 was withdrawn, so we don't have to worry about that one. Item number 7 is non-agenda. Anything, Tim? Anybody?
Actually, if I could, I know it's gone so late, but I just do want to thank Commissioner Rockow. I believe that the way she handled herself on recusing herself was commendable by leaving the meeting and not causing undue influence. I know she did provide the letter as a resident. She certainly has that right to an opinion. I do think that you all as planning commissioners bring a lot to the table even if it's your neighboring property. So I think a lot of times you can bring a lot to the table and look at the facts, but when you do have emotion because it's your house, I understand, and you really want to make sure that your voice is heard. She did a great job of recusing herself. So thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Did you have anything non-agenda, anybody?
Nope.
All right, I'll accept the motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Can we do it this way? Does anybody oppose? Motion passed. Have a great night.